continuing where we left off in class. We might have overlapped depending on which class you're in. Excuse me. The nucleus is the most important organelle in the cell. It directs all the cell's work and activities. It's the control center. It's in charge of everything, and the way it stays in charge of everything is it uses the instructions in the DNA to communicate with the rest of the parts of the cell, all the other organelles, and give them instructions on what they are to do. The DNA, where these instructions are found on little structures inside the nucleus called chromosomes. And every living thing has chromosomes, and depending on the type of living thing that we're discussing, that determines how many chromosomes are in that particular living thing. Humans, for example, we have 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs, and one of each pair came from each of our parents. Organisms like bacteria don't have chromosomes. They do have DNA, but it's just kind of free-floating out in the cytoplasm, but it is not contained inside a nucleus. Plant cells have chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are organelles that are able to capture sunlight, light energy, and convert that light energy into food, stored food. It uses carbon dioxide that it gets from the air and water that it gets from the ground, and it converts that light energy into stored chemical energy in the form of food molecules that we call glucose. Living things like us, we do not have chloroplasts. Only plant cells have chloroplasts. We do not have the ability to photosynthesize. That's what converting light energy into food energy with carbon dioxide and water is. That's photosynthesis. We can't do that. That's why we have to eat, we have to consume our energy. Chloroplasts, if you look at them, they are green in color, and that's what makes plants green. They contain a pigment called chlorophyll, and chlorophyll doesn't like cold weather. That's why in the fall, plants that have leaves with chlorophyll in them tend to die, or first the chlorophyll will break down and any other pigments that are in those leaves will be shown, and that's why we get fall colors. Those pigments are there all summer long, but there's just so much chlorophyll, so much green in the leaves that we don't get to see the oranges and the reds and the yellows. Mitochondria are organelles that are used to basically do the opposite that chloroplasts do. Mitochondria take oxygen and combine it with the food, perform a chemical reaction with that oxygen and turn that food into energy. The energy that is produced is used to give the cells energy to do their job, whatever their function is. Without mitochondria, cells can't do their work. Parts of the cells can't do their work. Some cells in your body may have more mitochondria than others, like, for example, your muscle cells. They need a large amount of energy to help you to walk, to run, to do all the other physical activities that you do. And so muscle cells tend to have more mitochondria than some of the other cells in your body. If you look real closely at the definitions of chloroplasts and mitochondria, you can see that they're pretty much opposite of each other. Chloroplasts are turning energy into glucose or food. Mitochondria are turning glucose or food into energy. So what one is doing, the other one is undoing. You could think of it that way. Moving on, another important organelle in cells are the ribosomes, sometimes pronounced ribosomes. And these guys are the workers in the cells. These are the ones that take instructions from the nucleus using the DNA. They create proteins. And proteins are the main product that cells use, cells create. Proteins are what get everything done in the cell. Every activity in the cell requires proteins, otherwise it's not going to happen. Some proteins are attached to the endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum that contains ribosomes we would call the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Some ribosomes float around kind of freely in the cytoplasm. They're little tiny little things, but they get instructions from the DNA, and that's how they learn which proteins they're supposed to make, when they're supposed to make them, and what they're supposed to do with them when they're finished. The endoplasmic reticulum, as we've mentioned before, is responsible for helping materials, particularly those proteins, be transported or moved throughout the cell. If raw materials are needed to make something like proteins, it is the endoplasmic reticulum that helps get them there. They're kind of like the conveyor belts in the factory, so to speak. If the endoplasmic reticulum has ribosomes attached to it, then we call it rough endoplasmic reticulum, sometimes abbreviated RER. If it does not have ribosomes attached to it, then it's called smooth endoplasmic reticulum, or SER. Golgi bodies, sometimes called Golgi apparatus, are the packaging portion of the cell. Once proteins are made, Golgi bodies package them into tiny little bubbles, okay, almost like putting a product into boxes to be shipped off to wherever they need to go. So the Golgi body is responsible for getting them organized so that they can be moved. Sometimes they're just moved to another part of the cell. Sometimes they are moved out of the cell and sent to another place in the body. Vacuoles are organelles that are used for storage. Usually not long-term storage, but temporary storage. They can store all kinds of things. Sometimes they're going to store additional water for use later. Sometimes they may store food molecules to be broken down later by the mitochondria. And sometimes they're going to store waste products for a short while until the cell is ready to get rid of them. Most plant cells, if you look at a plant cell under a microscope, are going to have one really big vacuole, and it's usually called the central vacuole. Central meaning the main one, and they're usually very large. They take up a lot of space, and the main thing that they hold is water. Helps give the plant some shape. Lysosomes are kind of like the maintenance and the janitor crew in the cell. They come down and they clean up the messes. They break down products that are no longer any good, maybe waste products or parts of the cell that don't work anymore or have been worn out and need to be replaced. So they break these things down. They may reuse the parts that can be reused, or they're going to ship out the waste products to be eliminated from the cell. Here's a quick picture. You can see some of these things here. You see this would be a plant cell. A couple ways that you can tell this is a plant cell. Number one, it has a large central vacuole. This one happens to be right in the middle of the cell. It's very, very large. It's probably containing water. You can also tell that this is a plant cell because it has chloroplasts, which are these green oblong objects. These are where food is created through photosynthesis. And you can tell also that it's a plant cell because it has a cell wall, because only plant cells have cell walls. Animal cells like ours do not. These colors, just understand, all except the chloroplast, these colors are arbitrary on this picture. Golgi apparatus aren't really red. Nuclei, your nucleus of your cells is not really purple. They're just colored here just for illustration purposes. But chloroplasts actually are green. Here's a term that we want to just review a little bit. We talked about this before. Organisms can either be unicellular, meaning they're only made of one cell, okay, like bacteria. You see there kind of in the maroonish color. Or they can be multicellular, as you see there with like the baby panda. These are things that are made of many, many cells. And if an organism is multicellular, they're going to have cells that are specialized. They're going to be specifically able to perform certain jobs that organism needs to have done. We are multicellular organisms. We're made up of trillions of cells, and those cells are specialized, each of them working together for the good of the whole entire organism.